These are the headlines we're following at this hour. President Yoon wrapped up his Saudi trip at the Future Investment Initiative, where he continued his sales efforts, calling South Korea a reliable partner for Saudi Arabia's post-oil economy. The president is now in Qatar for his summit talks with the Qatari leader to bolster bilateral cooperation in future industries. Amid the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza, a UN agency warns of having to halt aid operations unless there's more fuel delivery. Meanwhile, talks on a mass hostage release are still held up as Hamas asks for fuel to be included in aid, but Israel refuses this to prevent Hamas's access to fuel. South Korea's number of births and marriages hit a record low for the month of August, cooling down the natural population by its biggest margin so far this year. Good afternoon. We start in Qatar, where President Yoon began the second part of his Middle East diplomacy tour. He set for summit talks with his Qatari counterpart on Wednesday, seeking to ramp up bilateral cooperation in a variety of future industries. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young has what to expect.
President Yoon will seek to expand Seoul's relations with Doha beyond energy and construction to new emerging industries and ramp up cultural exchanges as they look to elevate their relations upon 50 years of bilateral ties next year. Landing in Doha on Tuesday, President Yoon became the first South Korean leader to make an official state visit to Qatar, continuing his Middle East diplomacy this week. Ahead of his summit on Wednesday with Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Yoon told the local media outlet that over the past half-century, South Korea and Qatar worked and prospered together, especially in the energy and construction sectors. He noted how Qatar is South Korea's second-largest supplier of liquefied natural gas, greatly contributing to its energy security, while South Korean firms have participated in numerous construction projects in Qatar, including the Lusail Expressway and the iconic National Museum of Qatar. However, Yoon said as Seoul explores ways to participate in Qatar's National Vision 2030, the two countries will seek to broaden the scope of cooperation centered on energy and construction to all areas, including investment, defense industry, farming, culture and interpersonal exchanges, so that people of both countries can enjoy more practical benefits. Upon his arrival in Doha Tuesday, Yoon attended the opening of the Korean Pavilion at the Doha International Horticultural Expo, showcasing a Korean-style garden along with the country's smart farm and agricultural technology.
The governments of both countries also plan to revise the Smart Farm Cooperation MOU on the occasion of this state visit and systematically promote specific cooperation projects such as the creation of a smart farm technology complex.
Following the Leaders' Summit on Wednesday, the South Korean president will attend a business forum with some 300 corporate leaders from both sides to encourage investment and collaboration in energy sectors like LNG and renewables, advanced technologies, health and cultural content. He will also speak with young Qataris, paying a visit to Education City, home to some of the world's leading institutes, startup incubators and technology parks, promoting collaborations with South Korea going forward in future industries. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Doha.
And before leaving for Qatar, President Yoon wrapped up his Saudi trip at the Future Investment Initiative. There he continued sales efforts, calling South Korea a reliable partner for Saudi Arabia's post-oil economy. Our Kim Do-yeon has the details.
At this year's Future Investment Initiative, dubbed the Davos in the Desert in Riyadh, President Yoon appeared as a special guest on Tuesday, walking in with Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. There, President Yoon used the stage to promote South Korea as a reliable investment to the participants, made up of 6,000 global business and finance leaders, including the CEOs of JP Morgan and Citigroup.
대한민국의 근면과 신뢰를 확인한 사우디 등 중동 국가들은 더 많은 공사를 맡겼으며 이는 부존 자원도 별다른 기술도 없었던 대한민국이 한강의 기적을 일구어 나가는 출발점이 됐습니다.
He also explained that while South Korea started with infrastructure construction in the Middle East, it's now leading in new technologies, including batteries, semiconductors, and EVs. The keynote speech was followed by an interview session with Scott Snyder, a director for the program on U.S.-Korea policy at the Council on Foreign Relations think tank. While answering questions on bilateral relations with Saudi Arabia, the South Korean president said mutual trust was one of the driving forces behind enhanced cooperation.
그동안 한국은 다른 선진 국가들이 오랜 세월 이룩한 그 산업화를 단기간에 압축해서 성장을 이루어냈기 때문에 이러한 경험을 사우디와 공유해서 사우디가 추진하고 있는 이 첨단 산업화가 빠른 속도로 이루어질 수 있도록 협력의 폭을 확대할 것입니다.
He also emphasized that people-to-people exchanges will play an important role in keeping the momentum going for the bilateral relations. In the audience, Bin Salman listened to the whole interview and showed support for President Yoon. In fact, according to the top office, the Saudi Crown Prince made a surprise visit to the guest house to meet Yoon before the FII and spoke candidly for around 20 minutes, sharing hopes that discussions during the state visit will yield results. He then drove President Yoon to the venue.
While heading to the FII venue, the Saudi Crown Prince said that he hopes next time Yoon visits, the two can be in a Hyundai electric car produced in Saudi Arabia.
As this was the last event of President Yoon's 4-day state visit to Riyadh, afterward, the two said a long goodbye to each other. According to the top office, the two enjoy a great relationship, and the meeting is a sign of a new chapter in Seoul-Riyadh cooperation. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
On to the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. A UN agency warns of having to halt aid operations unless there's more fuel delivery. Meanwhile, talks on a mass hostage release are still held up as Hamas asks for fuel to be included in aid. But Israel refuses this to prevent Hamas's access to fuel. Lee Seung-jae with the latest.
According to Israeli media outlets, a number of Hamas divers were killed on Tuesday when they tried to infiltrate Israel from Gaza via the sea. Israel Defense Forces say at least 6 divers were killed, although the exact number has not been confirmed. Reports say Israel's Navy forces spotted the group entering the sea from a tunnel and opened fire at the divers, killing them. Meanwhile, the UN agency responsible for Palestinian refugees warned it cannot continue to bring in more humanitarian aid into Gaza without more fuel being supplied. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in Near East said Tuesday that if more fuel isn't delivered to the war-torn region, it will be forced to halt humanitarian operations by Wednesday night. Israeli Daily Haaretz reported on Tuesday that negotiations for the release of a large number of hostages are underway after Hamas released 2 elderly Israelis earlier this week and 2 Americans last week. According to sources familiar with the negotiations, Qatar, Egypt, and other countries are negotiating with Hamas over the release of multiple hostages. The Daily says Hamas could ask for a number of things in exchange, such as more humanitarian aid, including fuel. And the White House also on Tuesday warned against a full ceasefire in Gaza, saying it would only benefit Hamas, but humanitarian pauses in the region should be considered to let aid in. U.S. President Joe Biden said the day before that talk about any ceasefire could start only once all of the more than 200 hostages taken by Hamas were released. And with concerns that Iran could get involved in the armed conflict, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told the UN that while Washington does not seek any conflict with Tehran, it would act swiftly and decisively if Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere.
The United States does not seek conflict with Iran. We do not want this war to widen. But if Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere, make no mistake, we will defend our people, we will defend our security, swiftly and decisively.
The comments came as Blinken spoke to the 15-member UN Security Council amid international fears the conflict could spill over into a wider war and draw in other militant groups like Hezbollah. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The U.S. envoy for North Korean human rights issues, Julie Turner, has urged the international community to act together against China for sending North Korean defectors back to the regime. Turner was speaking on Tuesday at a forum on North Korea's human rights issues at the UN headquarters, where she said around 600 North Korean defectors recently detained in China were forcibly repatriated to North Korea. She said further action is needed as it is well known that those who return to North Korea are treated harshly or even executed. The ambassador also stressed that the global community should actively support defectors who have successfully escaped from the north. On Tuesday, China officially dismissed its defense minister Li Shangfu, who disappeared from public view after the China-Africa Peace Security Forum about 2 months ago. Beijing is yet to reveal the reason for Li's dismissal or name his replacement. While Yi had been sanctioned by the United States in 2018 for illegal arms purchases from Russia, Chinese President Xi Jinping appointed him as defense minister in March this year. U.S. Defense Department spokesperson Patriot Ryder mentioned ongoing efforts by both nations' leaders to foster open dialogue regarding Li's dismissal, with the view that it may potentially signal improved U.S.-China relations ahead of China's top diplomat Wang Yi's visit to U.S. on Thursday. South Korea's expected inflation rate in consumer prices for next year has risen for the first time in 8 months amid increased volatility in oil prices. On Wednesday, the Bank of Korea's Consumer Sentiment Index in October shows its expected inflation rate for next year at 3.4%, 0.1 percentage points higher than in September. An official from the Bank of Korea stated that the increase is expected prices comes amid increased uncertainty about oil prices due to the Israel-Hamas conflict. South Korea's number of births and marriages hit a record low for the month of August, pulling down the national population by its biggest margin so far this year. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
South Korea's population crisis continues as it logs the biggest natural population decline this year. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday, 18,984 births were recorded in August, nearly a 13% drop compared to the same month the year before. All major regions saw a decline in the number of births with the single exception of Dokdo province. This is the lowest number of births for the month of August since data was first compiled in 1981. The number of deaths surpassed the 30,000 mark in the same month for the first time since January this year, for the highest number of deaths in August on record. With the number of births at its lowest and the number of deaths at its highest, the natural population decline came to over 11,000, the biggest drop so far this year. South Korea has been seeing a natural population decline calculated by subtracting the number of deaths from the number of births for 46 months straight. Concerns over the country's demographics were heightened even further by the declining number of marriages. August this year saw the lowest number of people wed for that month, coming in at just over 14,000, a drop of 7% on year. The number of registered marriages had seen a slight increase at the beginning of the year on the back of eased COVID-19 restrictions enabling people to host weddings, but began to show fluctuations in April. Figures dipped for April before rising again in May, only to decline once again through to July. The number of divorces also showed a decline of around 2% on year, coming to just over 8,000. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Later this week, the government is set to announce more details about its plan to increase the medical school enrollment quota that's been frozen at a little over 3,000 since 2006. This is part of a greater plan to structurally reform the medical infrastructure to ensure quality services in essential fields. Our Lee Shangfu reports.
The government recently revealed its medical infrastructure reform plan, which includes increases in medical school enrollment quotas. The ruling and opposition parties have also launched related task forces as the number of doctors falls short of the OECD average. According to OECD statistics, for every 1,000 people in South Korea, there's just 2.6 practicing medical doctors. This is the second lowest figure in the OECD, which has an average of 3.7 doctors per 1,000 people. The ruling People Power Party says that the ultimate goal isn't the quota increase, but building a system where more lives are saved.
The number of patients who have died despite being eligible for treatment is 38.6 per 100,000 people in Seoul, while 49.6 in Gangwon-do. There's such a severe medical imbalance between regions. We need to build a system that allows patients in a critical emergency to be treated in a timely manner.
The main opposition Democratic Party is pushing for the founding of public medical schools and fostering stronger medical education at existing public universities.
Unless public medical doctors are directly trained or regional doctor systems are introduced, it will be impossible to secure essential medical personnel. The DP's solution is not to simply increase the number, but to make sure that the government carefully controls the number and their deployment.
Meanwhile, the Korean Medical Association says that simply increasing the number will not solve the issue.
The collapse of essential medical care and regional gaps that Korean society is encountering is essentially due to the avoidance of certain departments. So we're doubtful that increasing the quantitative number will improve the avoidance problem.
The KMA will be meeting with the Health Ministry this Thursday to discuss the issue. Discussions are also expected to continue at the Parliament until the details are finalized by spring to be reflected in the 2025 university admissions. Lee Shangfu, Arirang News.
South Korea celebrates Dokdo Day every October 25th to commemorate the easternmost island of Dokdo as a symbol of Korean independence and sovereignty. This year, there's more reason to celebrate, as according to the Korea Maritime Transportation Safety Authority, as passenger numbers on the coastal liner service to Dokdo have recovered to pre-COVID-19 pandemic levels, with over 270,000 visitors in 2022. 200,000 people have already made the trip up to September of this year. Currently, 3 ferries operate on the route between Ulleungdo Island and Dokdo, carrying around 10,000 passengers per week. That figure is set to rise from March next year, when an additional newly built vessel is expected to begin running. The eco-friendly movement is trending among farmers who are working towards lessening or removing the use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Yoon has a story.
Dubbed the home of Tanger, this is a Halla Mountain tangerine farm on Jeju Island. The dark green leaves and healthy fruit are noticeably different from those in other farms.
As soon as people walk in, they ask what I used. They ask me what I'm keeping to myself. They ask for the secret.
These are the effects of moving away from conventional farming methods and using microorganisms that strengthen the soil and prevent diseases and pests. Now, this is Gangneung City in the Gangwon-do province, known for its vegetables grown in the highlands. Healthy cabbage is grown at 1,100 meters above sea level, and the problem of dealing with rotting roots has disappeared.
The crop conditions are quite good this year. Last year, we couldn't use a single head of cabbage due to warts, but there were none this year.
This was the case not only for Mr. Kim's 66,000 square meter cabbage farm, but the 82,000 square meters making up other mountain farmlands in the area also had a good harvest season. This year was the first time that more than 30 cabbage farmers of highland cabbage boldly moved away from traditional farming methods and reaped success with a new microbial farming method. The farmers here in Gangwon-do province made a 10-ton container specifically for the purpose of cultivating microorganisms for their farming, and it has paid off.
In the process of microorganism cultivation, there are many metabolites produced, which not only control pests, but also promote crop growth. And because the farmers do the cultivating themselves, this is a low-cost and high-efficiency farming method.
Additionally, there are 30,000 farms that have started using a chitin and gelatin decomposition microbial farming method. As the farming and agriculture industry adapts to the growing importance of practicing carbon neutrality, more farmers are expected to introduce various eco-friendly farming methods that will also be passed down to future generations. 이은진, 아리랑 뉴스.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the US, Republican Congressman Tom Emmer has dropped out from his bid to be House Speaker just hours after he received his party's nomination. Emmer won the Speaker nomination following 5 rounds of secret ballots on Tuesday, but the congressman from Minnesota failed to win Republican support on the House floor amid harsh criticisms from the former President Donald Trump. It is the Republican Party's 3rd failed attempt to elect their House Speaker, following attempts by Steve Scalise of Louisiana and Jim Jordan of Ohio. With concerns over a government shutdown looming, House GOP Conference Chair Elise Stefanik confirmed that 6 Republicans are now running for Speaker in the 4th try. Dozens of US states are suing Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, over youth addiction to social media. In a joint lawsuit filed by 33 states on Tuesday in the U.S. District Court of Northern District of California, Meta was alleged to have harmed young people's mental health by misleading them and using addictive features. A further 8 states and Washington, D.C. filed separate lawsuits. The lawsuits come after a 2-year investigation following Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen revealing that Meta deliberately exploited young users' vulnerabilities for profit by providing addictive features targeting children. 2 cargo ships have collided in the North Sea off the coast of Germany, leaving 1 crew member dead and 4 missing. 2 of the 7 crew aboard the British-flagged freighter Verity, which collided with the Bahamian Polsey at around 5 a.m. local time on Tuesday morning, have been rescued. According to the German Coast Guard, rescue efforts are still continuing, with divers searching the sunken Verity for signs of life. The Verity was en route to the UK from Bremen, Germany, with a cargo of steel when it collided with Polsey, a ship that was en route from Hamburg to La Coruña in Spain. None of the 22 people on board the Polsey were injured. A superfog near the U.S. city of New Orleans has caused a crash of more than 150 vehicles. The pileup on Interstate 55 on Monday has left at least 7 dead. Thick fog and smoke from marsh fires caused a dense superfog, impairing visibility for drivers commuting. Authorities clearing up the wreckage on the highway said a further 25 people were injured, while warning that the death toll could rise. Kim Si-young, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. After a foggy start, the skies have cleared. While temperature swings continue though, especially in Uiseong, Korea's garlic capital in Gyeongsang-Dokdo province, where they're having a swift transition from the early winter chill to a milder afternoon. About defined as a situation in central regions and Chungcheongdo provinces, dust levels might spike higher than their usual morning and evening standards. But the rest of the country, fortunately, should be able to breathe easy today. The south is an infiltrate under sunny skies with plenty of autumn warmth. Highs in Seoul will be about 3 degrees warmer today at a cozy 22 degrees Celsius. We are eyeing some rain creeping into the forecast for central regions and Jeollado provinces starting late tomorrow afternoon and tapering off by Friday at dawn. Then come Friday, eastern regions will have a rainy day. But promising weather returns just in time for the weekend. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Back in Riyadh, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman gave President Yoon Suk-yeol a ride to the Future Investment Initiative himself. During that 15-minute ride, the Crown Prince expressed hopes of making their next ride together in a Hyundai electric vehicle. That referring to Hyundai Motors' joint investment deal with Saudi's Public Investment Fund to build an assembly plant in the country that was signed during President Yoon's trip to Riyadh. The plant will be set up in King Abdullah Economic City, the center of Saudi Arabia's car industry. It will be Korea's first EV plant in the Middle East, which Saudi media hail as a golden opportunity for both countries, with the Crown Prince seemingly expressing his high hopes during that ride. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.